We are going to go ahead and get started right on time at 2 o'clock Eastern. Welcome everyone who has joined, and I know we'll have more folks join over the course of the next few minutes, but we're really looking forward to a great hour. This is the new Age of Nuclear Advocacy. This is an event hosted by Nuclear Matters, the grassroots coalition of nuclear supporters. And we are really, really pleased to have our 4 speakers on camera with us here. I'll introduce them in a second. I'm Renee Johnston. I am the campaign manager of Nuclear Matters. And I'll just say a few words. We're really happy to be doing this event right now. It's a critically important time for nuclear energy. It's a period everyone has been saying we've never seen before, with wide adoption, lots of conversation, lots of exciting new developments. So the time for nuclear advocacy is changing as the industry is. And so we are really excited to dive deeper into what that means for next year and for the years to come. So thank you again, everyone who's joined. We're going to go ahead and do some intros. I'll say some words about our 4 panelists here. Then we'll walk through a couple of policy priorities, then we'll get into questions. Throughout the event, if you have a question, please enter it into the Q&A box, and we'll get it on our end, and we'll go through those towards the end of the hour. But on with us today, we have Kristin Zaitz, a licensed professional civil engineer, project manager, and environmental advocate with over 23 years of experience in energy. Kristin leads PG&E's generating strategic sourcing team, including materials and services supply chain responsibility for California's largest source of emissions-free electricity at Diablo Canyon, as well as strategic sourcing for PG&E's hydro, renewable, and fossil assets. Kristin has previous experience in engineering, power plant decommissioning, planning projects, and higher education. She is also a co-founder of Mothers for Nuclear, and she believes in supporting all clean energy sources to address humanitarian and environmental issues. She's a past president of the North American Young Generation in Nuclear, and she believes in supporting all clean, and served on various environmental nonprofit boards. So welcome, Kristin. Next up is Dr. Robert Hayes, an associate professor of nuclear engineering at North Carolina State University here in Raleigh, where I'm sitting right now, with a joint faculty appointment at the Savannah River National Laboratory. His expertise spans nuclear nonproliferation, including nuclear assay and retrospective dosimetry, and also finds health physics, nuclear critical safety, burn-up shielding, nuclear waste disposal, and novel detection methods of interest, particularly when they relate back to nonproliferation. Dr. Hayes is a certified health physicist and a licensed professional engineer in nuclear, with industry and field experience in radiological emergency response, nuclear waste management, nuclear safety, radiation dosimetry, nuclear criticality, safety, air monitoring, and shielding design. Next, we have Jennifer Avellaneda Díaz as a passionate nuclear energy advocate and probabilistic risk assessment engineer at Westinghouse, with a bachelor's degree in sustainable development engineering from Tecnológico de Monterrey, and currently pursuing a master's at Texas A&M in nuclear engineering. She combines technical expertise with a deep commitment to advancing sustainable energy solutions. Inspired by the potential of nuclear energy from a young age, Jennifer leverages her platform Nuclear Hazelnut to educate and engage diverse audiences on the pivotal role of nuclear energy in advancing clean energy goals. Through her work and advocacy, she attempts to challenge misconceptions, dismantle stereotypes, highlight groundbreaking innovations, and amplify diverse voices to drive meaningful change. Looking forward to hearing more from you. And finally, last but not least, Ryan Pickering is an energy developer and policy expert with a political science degree from Loyola Marymount University and advanced studies in energy innovation at Stanford University. He's a co-founder of the Nuclear Energy is Clean Energy, or NICE Club at UC Berkeley. He helped extend operations at Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. He serves as crew facilitator for the Department of Energy's consent-based siting consortia, advanced nuclear fuel storage with tribal consent, and contributes to the DOE's Pathways to Commercial Liftoff reports. He's a speaker at global forums like COP28 and Climate Week NYC. Ryan advocates for integrating nuclear and renewable energy to drive sustainable development and global peace. Great 4 speakers today with lots of diverse experiences, and we're going to hear more from them in a second. But first, we're going to show the policy priorities. We want to ground ourselves a little bit in what's coming. So advocacy is all focused on advocating for the issues and the policies and the things that we want to see come true. So we want to make sure we take a second at the top of this call to ground ourselves in the nuclear policy priorities looking ahead to the next year. There's a lot going on with both existing fleet and new nuclear technology. So our policy priorities, of course, span across those different realms. First is defending existing incentives for nuclear, defend IRA tax credits for production of nuclear energy, and other forms of tax credits that have been very beneficial to the industry and have led to a lot of growth and development. That's number 1. Number 2, we want to encourage states to explore nuclear technology with more studies, working groups, commissions, and task forces. Even just taking a moment to look at what does nuclear bring to our community, to our state, will allow for a better conversation next year and in the years to come on the role that nuclear could play for that location or that group. Emphasizing the positive attributes of nuclear as power providers and state governments and legislators and regulators look at the portfolio mix that they want to pursue and that they're going to have in their contingency, emphasizing those positive attributes of nuclear as clean, reliable, and secure energy source that boosts economic development. We're going to continue to advocate and continue to raise awareness about those positive benefits and those attributes. And finally, we're watching states repeal nuclear moratoriums and signal regulatory support for exploration of nuclear energy. This is sort of in line with the idea about having working groups and task forces. States that have never really even had a lot of conversation around nuclear in the past, we're seeing that come up more and more, and we're going to continue to see that. So these are just some of the nuclear policy priorities that we're looking at next year. There's a lot of differences, of course, at the federal and state level and within different states, lots of different ways we could talk about where we should aim our advocacy and where we should be as a coalition and as a group of supporters of nuclear energy, where we should be diving in. So just wanted to take that moment to ground us in the policy priorities before we dive into the conversation and we hear from our panelists. Want to give you all a second to answer my first question, which is, pulling from these policy priorities that you've seen, how do you think advocates can help achieve them? The advocates we have on the line, the advocates we know are out there, how can they help achieve those policy priorities? Kristin, let's start with you.
Ooh, okay, let's do this. Well, I just saw those policy priorities this morning, but I have to say they weren't surprising. And they are really aligned with the policy priorities we've had in place for 7 years now at Mothers for Nuclear. You just showed 4 and talked about them. At Mothers for Nuclear, we have 3. Number 1, save existing nuclear. Number 2, build more. Number 3, innovate and deploy advanced nuclear. So then you can get in the weeds about what it means to do each one, right? But, number 1, save existing nuclear. That's how we started with Mothers for Nuclear. And I think it's important, if you're going to advocate for nuclear at all, it's really difficult to see a future for the nuclear industry if a reality comes true that the existing fleet goes away. That's going to be very difficult for supply chain, for advancement and development, for education, et cetera. And there's so many other reasons. I'm going to not hold the mic to talk you into this because this is a call for advocates. So I know I don't need to do that. But you asked how to achieve that. And I think something that I learned the hard way after starting Mothers for Nuclear with Heather Hoff in 2016 was to talk about things people care about. I think that this is just like communications 101, but I don't know about you, but I never got communications 101. I'm an engineer by training, so I had to learn by doing. And I found that it's so valuable for us with a technical background if we can learn a little bit about communications and start to talk a little differently with people, not necessarily leading with our data, the things that are so important to us, the things we really care about, but know your audience, especially in today's climate where a lot of topics are very polarized. You really want to know what those people care about and then talk about those things. That is very engaging. And then I'll end just with a tip also to use storytelling. Even though I'm an engineer, I'm always, when I'm on the spot, I'm always hesitant to like bust out a whole bunch of facts and figures, because there's always some like little stage fright thing going on. And what if I, mix up a decimal place or say something wrong? And I just have to say, like, I've really gotten over that through the years by reminding myself to use storytelling and to show, not tell, my main points. And really, like, you can have all your leave behinds with the data, and that's great. People are going to look at those later, but what they're really going to remember is if you engaged them. And if you can do that through storytelling, it's much more memorable.
That's right. Excellent. Jennifer, let's go to you.
Yes, of course. So I think I'm going to resonate a little bit to what Kristin just said. And let me say, I absolutely agree with everything that you just said. I believe that, well, we all know right now that nuclear energy is reliable, it's the cleanest, and it's very vital for energy security, right? But the question is, how can advocates can like support right now? What can they do? So again, resonating a little bit, I do believe that advocates should frame it as a bridge to sustainable future while also reducing carbon emissions, right? So sharing data on its not only the data and the numbers behind a nuclear reactor, right, but also sharing the economics, sharing the environmental benefits can definitely drive home its role in combating climate change. So by combining kind of a storytelling, data-driven communication, and also collaboration with the industry and policymakers, I do believe that advocates can effectively champion these priorities and also position nuclear energy as a cornerstone of a clean and sustainable energy future. I remember when I had the opportunity to attend COP28, and the first thing that people asked me, my friends, my neighbors, my family, is like, what are you doing there? Like, you are nuclear. It's like, yeah, nuclear energy is now taking part of the energy conversation, like the clean energy conversation. That's what I'm doing there, to engage into discussions and educate people, try to, talk about recent myths or movies or whatever people are trying to ask right now. It's like, hey, I am someone with experience. I am working within the industry, and I invite you to ask me questions, and I'll do to the best of my abilities to solve them. And also to invite you to do the same, like create that chain reaction. You ask me a question, you receive part of my experience, and then you can tell your colleagues, you can tell your friends, and that's how we advocate for nuclear.
I love that, the interpersonal aspect. It's a conversation. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Hayes, you go next.
So I think those were some really good points from my colleagues there. I would add that there are two ways of going about this. You can talk with your friends and family and coworkers and so forth. If you wanted to have a bigger impact, that can be really difficult if you don't already have a platform. If you're not an elected official, if you're not an authority, you're not a decision maker or something like that, then it's going to be difficult for you to go beyond your circle of people who care about you and so listen to you because they care about you. And so if you want to go beyond that, then I would argue the only real effective way to do that is going to be through social media. Unless you can get in a position where you have a voice. I did this back when I worked at the waste isolation pilot plant the last time. I volunteered to be the science writer for the local newspaper. So I would write science articles, but I knew that nuclear was an issue there, so I wanted to make sure that it was reported on correctly. And that was how I did that. After that, if you're not able to do that or you don't have a voice, then I would say the only alternative, besides just your circle of friends, is to go onto social media and advocate there.
Ryan.
In addition to all of that, I would say I joined nuclear advocacy because I thought it was fun, and I thought I liked the people in it, and I liked what Mothers for Nuclear was doing, and it just like wasn't taking itself that seriously. So I felt like I could contribute to it. And because I was just learning about nuclear for the first time, and I'm still just learning about it, it's such a big, society-wide movement. And so what and this is kind of maybe like a lifelong commitment in a way, because it's going to take us a long time to build all of, transition the world to this technology. So I'm trying to think of ways that we can find sustainability through this. And one of the ways is, work on what you're interested in. And to Dr. Hayes's point, like everyone there's so many different digital platforms out there, and there are more on the way. I think like Substack has been interesting. Like however you want to express yourself, I think posting on LinkedIn has been valuable for me because, the exercise of writing or content creation is like crystallizing a thought, trying to make it make sense to yourself. And so, I write for other people, I guess, but I'm also writing for myself so that I can understand it and empower myself so that I can write to legislators. And, that's like one of the that's like the bitter pill with like all the fun stuff. You can do all the fun stuff and educate yourself and create community and try to solve these things. But when you find a policy issue or you find something that's real, you should definitely email the legislators that it's relevant to, and then post that email, a screenshot of it, onto social media and see how that can vibe all together. So I'm just, I'm feeling so grateful in this moment, and the three of you have been so instructive in my own, recent interest in nuclear. And so I think if we can all just continue to kind of create some motion here, we're in a good position.
Building off of that, the momentum that we have and the community that has been built in terms of nuclear advocacy, Ryan, you bring up a great point on that. We're learning from each other. We're looking at what others are doing. You said, send a note to your legislator and then post a screenshot of that note. We're going to have a lot of new legislators and policymakers coming into the elected positions in January of next year, and as well as throughout the government with the changeover in the administration. What are some ways that nuclear advocates can educate their lawmakers on the importance of nuclear? Is it reaching out? Are there other ways? And what are some of the challenges that come along with that? If you all could speak about that, I'd love to hear more.
Well, I can just provide an example. I like to write a letter in a group, like a small group, that says, the four of us were thinking that this is a good idea, and send it. And then we can write it. It's not all incumbent on one person. And so there are lots of nuclear advocacy groups. I think most recently I did this with Rethinking Nuclear out of Wisconsin. And they're interested, retired folks in nuclear. And there's 7 people in the group, and we wrote President Biden a thank you letter for the triple nuclear energy pledge, and that we are going to work on that, and we're going to advocate that the next administration picks that up, and like, did we get a response from the White House? No. Did we post a picture of our very short letter on our social media? Yes. Do we get 6 more followers from it? Yes. And then we do it again and again. So there's so much content to create. And I think what we don't have in nuclear, or what we struggle to have, is a source of truth. There's like a lot of information and everyone. And so it's like, so by getting some folks together and kind of vetting some information and writing a letter together, it's not just my take. It's like we all kind of agreed on it. And we just make a Google Doc and share it with all of our emails, and then email and say, is this good? Okay, print. And then, send that letter. So I think there are a lot of different ways in which to do that. And I think, if Nuclear Matters can prompt us and like tell us what's important, we can kind of ideate around that and make it make sense to us and our local state or community or stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's what Nuclear Matters is here for. Other thoughts on how we can educate new policymakers early next year. Yeah, Kristin.
Yeah, I know. People have all sorts of ideas about politics and policies, but I'll just say nuclear is such a great topic because it's one of the most bipartisan topics. And so, while the interests and the focus and the talking points may change with a new administration, every administration needs reliable electricity. Every administration is going to want that electricity to be as low cost as possible. And despite what individuals might think, every administration is going to want that electricity to be as clean as possible. It's better for human health, it's better for the environment, but the way they talk about it is different. So watch it on that. I had an early experience that is seared into my memory now of going into a local county board of supervisors office and wanting to talk to her about nuclear. And I started the conversation by talking about, of course, this was my lesson, about what I cared about, which is about action on climate. And oh boy, she said, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't believe in climate change. And if you want to talk about that, this is going to be a short conversation. And I was like, okay. Had to take a minute to recover. Totally recovered, and then talked about her talking points. But it was great. At the end of the day, we still talked about nuclear, and she was supportive. She talked about all the reasons why she cared about it. And does it really matter to me if she believes in climate change? It doesn't. What matters to me is our what we can agree on there. We agreed that it was important to keep existing nuclear plants operating. So that's like a little experience as we're going into this new administration. Check your talking points. Look at who you're going to talk with and talk about what they care about. I'd also say I got some early experience with the North American young generation in nuclear. I don't know if they do this anymore, but it was really fantastic. We did Hill Days where we had a bunch of young people together from across the industry. We had meetings, a little conference, and our last day we took everyone to the Hill. And it was kind of terrifying for me, but it was like to Ryan's point, it's better to go with a friend, whether you're writing a letter or whether you're physically going to an office, take a buddy. And of course, NEI was helpful in that and, helping us with talking points, making sure we had leave behinds. And I took that early experience into Mothers for Nuclear when Heather and I first did a Hill Day. Then we had no corporate partner to do anything for us, but we teamed up. We had a really great individual who's still a good friend, Jarrett Adams. He runs Full On Communications. He saw what we were doing with Mothers for Nuclear and he reached out and said, I like what you're doing. I want to help you. And so he already was on the Hill for his day job. He set up appointments for us. He gave us a little coaching about topics that were hot at the moment. And he just made us so much more successful, having a little partnership on the way. So I guess in everything I'm saying, I'm affirming what, Ryan's point is to team up. You don't need to go at this alone, especially with a new administration. Find people who know what they're doing, get some input, get some feedback, and then go in with confidence talking about things that those people care about.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, I do believe that my colleagues. Yeah, I do believe that my colleagues brought up very interesting experiences and also points of view. And the reason I was so eager to share what I was thinking right now is because I have had very different experiences, right? So I moved to the USA pretty much 6 years ago, right? So I was very passionate about nuclear, as always I've ever been since I was 12 years old. But I was obviously with no friends and I didn't know anyone. I was kind of starting to understand the politics, the policy making and the country itself, right? I completely fell in love with it, by the way. So I just wanted to share that either you could take a friend or you could also just jump by yourself as I did. And I remember in 2022, I sent a letter to Senator John Cornyn from the Texas, sorry. And I sent a letter hey, I do believe I already know that we have the second biggest plant in the US here in Texas. And we also have Comanche Peak and I love that. But what are we doing to increase it? What are we doing to start building more, to inviting, like more companies and policymakers and everybody to start, like investing more in nuclear? If it's in Texas, great. If it's not, it doesn't matter as long as it is nuclear, right? And I did receive an answer. On the contrary of Ryan, I did receive like a letter from him. It was a little bit disappointing because I could see that the reply was basically a copy and paste of whatever it was on their webpage regarding their energy matters position. But still, I think I made a point and I received a reply, which means somebody in his team like read it and actually replied back to me. So I created a connection and I think I replied back, but I didn't receive anything. But still, I was asking questions, I was making noise, and I was also opening myself. I remember I wrote there, like, whatever you need to help, I can go out to schools, I can go out to policymakers to actively speak to them. Whatever you need, like, I'm at your service. And that is also something that I like to invite everybody that is actually here right now listening to us. With the new administration, regardless of their party, whether or not you agree with them or not, what it's important is our common goal, bring more nuclear, start building nuclear, have nuclear into the clean energy conversation. That's what matters. So focus on that, reach out. We have social media. They also have social media. I also recently got reached out by, I think it was Representative Filler from Michigan. And he was so excited to talk about nuclear. And he was like, hey, I'm new in the area. How can I help? So they are also policymakers there open to the possibility to help us advocates, so it's like a two-way support. And I think whether you go with a friend or you are very eager to do it by yourself, lose the scariness behind it and just do it. You don't know, you might receive a reply like I did from the White House, which was very exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah, no, exactly. You don't know unless you try, right? Put it out there, raise your voice, and see what happens. Dr. Hayes, anything to add on this topic of educating new policymakers and reaching out, engaging them?
Sure. I do make it a habit of trying to visit my elected officials in DC when I have to go there. I do go there more often than I would like throughout the year. And not all of my elected officials will even see me. And those that do will only send staffers. And what I've often found is that their position will be, well, we consider ourselves pro-nuclear, so we don't need to do anything. And I would make some policy recommendations. I'd ask for some things to happen to help make this occur. And that's been my feeling from when I've interacted with staffers. The time that I actually did see that I made a difference was something different. It was one of the former students that was here at NC State that was a staffer for a congressman, a Democratic congressman from New Mexico, who would be considered pro-nuclear. And there I was able to communicate by talking to the student, getting a meeting with their staffers. The thing is that having an expert tell the staffers this and then having somebody on the staff interpret that for them so that they could go and talk about it afterwards made all the difference in the world, because I was advocating for an increase in radiation protection professionals. We need nuclear engineers, absolutely, unequivocally, but we also need radiological protection experts, radiation safety experts. In fact, in New Mexico, when I lived there, I used to work at the waste isolation pilot plant. The state law was that you could not be considered an expert in environmental radioactivity unless you were a certified health physicist. And there are just so few of those. And I communicated that, right? If you want to remediate the mine tailings in New Mexico, you're going to need experts. By law, at least what the law was at the time. And they actually put it into a bill that they tried to get passed. And so that was the biggest change that I've ever made. But it was because there was someone on staff that was able to interpret what I had spoken, right? So I gave them the facts. These are the facts. And that made the biggest difference. And so that's been my experience with trying to address lawmakers personally.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great example, and it's highly technical, but if you think about the impact it has, it's very tangible, right? Like, you're talking about real impact and a lot of highfalutin words, but again, real impact. And that's, I think, one of the keys of nuclear advocacy, very highly technical field with a lot of nuances. How do we make it matter for people? Before I ask my next question, just a quick reminder to please put questions in the chat. If you have questions for our panelists, we're going to transition to audience questions in a little bit, but so please do enter questions in the Q&A chat on the Teams function. Next question I have, we've talked a little about speaking on the topics we know people care about, and the fact that nuclear is bipartisan in its support. Everyone on both sides of the aisle understand its importance. What are some ways, though, that we can bring more people into the tent? People who maybe are skeptical or on the fence or have a specific issue with nuclear. How can we bring them into the tent, into the bubble, and help make them into nuclear supporters like you all? What are some ways we can do that? What are some strategies? Who wants to take that first? Ryan?
An interesting question. I think, coming from the renewable energy side, we're really interested in imagined futures and imagining a world that we want to live in so that we can go towards that, think longer term. And that's why I'm so grateful that for like the Native American people who are getting involved in nuclear, giving us like a longer viewpoint, instead of like what's happening tomorrow. It's like what's happening in 100 years from now. And it's nice. It lets us make good decisions, many good decisions in a row. And they're not hard decisions. They're just a series of like well-defined engineering, efficient, energy dense decisions so that all of us can live together in this amazing country and lead the world. And the party continues, and it's going to be fun, and it doesn't have to be so serious. It's just where it's going. It's just the new technology for making energy, and it's proven now. And I think how do we get more people involved is you give them a job, like pay them. I don't know. Like, I think nuclear is going to be a really big industry. Like, it's going to be. So imagine all the people who work in other energy sources, imagine them having to work with nuclear, right? Like, but beyond getting paid and I think it is important that nuclear professionals do some amount of advocacy. I don't care what it is, it just has to be something random. And because just if we all do it, we're like 100,000 people in the US, but the industry needs to grow to 400,000 people by 2050. So like, yeah, it's about like getting involved and being a private citizen, but also like get involved with an entrepreneurship mindset, because we got to build some nuclear plants. We have to build 200 gigawatts in the next 25 years.
Yeah.
Hello. And like, so I'm like, yeah, nuclear engineers, sure. Like, where are the welders? Where are the concrete people? Where are the land people, the water people, the transmission people? Where are the environmentalists? Where are the advocacy groups? Where are the NGOs? Like, society-wide movement. And I think that that's like a feeling out of the Department of Energy right now is it's like, oh, it's a society-wide movement. And the other thing we forget about American, and what Secretary Granholm from the Department of Energy has been very clear about, is that she says society-wide movement, which I love that. 3 words, easy to remember. And she thinks that it's private industry-led, government-enabled. Let's just be honest about that. This is America. We do things differently in America. We freaking do a really, really good job for top dollar. And with nuclear, that works. And I think it goes beyond nuclear because there's all these other technologies that are like nuclear that are like upgrading our society right now. And it has to do with environmentalism and agriculture and Native American people. And so I really have been thinking about this idea of like a sanctuary economy, where it's like it's like because our nuclear plants, they're such precious places and they're ecosystems. Many more animals live at the nuclear plants than people. No people live at the nuclear plants. Thousands and thousands of mammals and stuff like and fish. So like okay, let's think about the land. And then whose land is it? It's all these Native American people's land. Let's get them involved immediately.
Yeah.
Like, what's up? Let's give I love controlled burns. So shout out to YTT tribe, Yaktichu Tichu Yaktilhini tribe. or you can call them Tilhini for short, or YTT. They have many names. Tilhini is kind of the new tribe name. Is in San Luis Obispo, is they want to do prescribed burns on the land to take care of, to mitigate fire risk in California. And this is the way, this is a technology to mitigate fire risk, is by doing these very small controlled burns with native and public involvement. And shout out to Tilhini tribe, because they're part of the community there. And so they're working with the community. It's not just a tribe that shows up. You know, these are like esteemed members of these these sanctuary economies, because in the sanctuary economy, everyone has a job. Just like if you go to San Luis Obispo, everyone's got a job around Diablo or all of these nuclear plants. So, and then if you don't want to work in nuclear, you can live somewhere else and just get free, clean energy and pay good money for it to the utility company who you should hold accountable to do a good job.
So bringing the people in who are most impacted and getting them, you know, to have a voice and have a say in the industry. That makes sense.
And it's everyone. It's
right.
The whole society, society-wide movement. And so what responsibility do we have to the public as the people who understand this? Because 90% of the people don't know. I consider myself as someone who doesn't know how nuclear works. You know, I'm like the 90% who doesn't. And like, what is fair to the public? What can, and that's why I like the 4 slides that you started with. I just saw that today for the first time. And I like the positivity. We got to stay positive and remind ourselves that we do good work. And like, nuclear is boring because it's just good all the time, you know.
Boring good.
24/7 good. So like it thrives on the stability of that, and it's going to be big. So thanks for letting me.
You made a great point. I want to hear from others on how you think we bring more folks into the tent to support nuclear. Yeah, Jennifer.
Yes, of course. Something that I also like to highlight whenever I'm talking or advocating about nuclear, which happens like pretty much 24/7, is to bring the basic meaning of sustainable development, which was kind of, I think, developed by the UN long ago. So sustainable development, and that's how I kind of start a conversation without saying the word nuclear. Which is something that I'm trying to normalize, because whenever I say nuclear, people could say, hey, I love nuclear energy, or, ooh, I'm scared of nuclear. And it's like, let's normalize that one. But that's why I start with sustainable development. So when I start like engaging with people, I say, okay, so we have sustainable development. Do you know what it is? Yes, no. Well, basically, it's all about meeting the needs of our present without compromising our ability or their ability for future generations, right? To meet their own needs. And sustainable development involves like a balancing of economic growth, environmental protection, and also social well-being. So those are like the 3 main pillars of sustainable development. And guess what? Nuclear energy plays a vital role in this balance, like in the 3 of them. First, and we all know this, it provides reliable and scalable electricity with minimal carbon footprint, right? And this is whether or not people believe in climate change, it is also making a critical tool fighting this problem that we all share. Again, whether you believe it on it or not, we are all fighting against it. Second, nuclear energy supports economic growth, economic development. Most of the people that I have a conversation with, they didn't know that a single nuclear power plant with a single reactor can actually employ between 600 and 800 people. Can you imagine the amount of jobs that a single nuclear power plant creates for that community, wherever it is located? So imagine now tripling that by 2050. We are tripling not only the electricity, the clean electricity that we are providing, but we are also tripling the jobs. We are also tripling an economical impact, you know, while protecting the environment. So that's kind of a mixture that I like to share every time I have the opportunity to have a discussion about nuclear energy. Is that, yes, we are providing clean energy, but not only that, we are supporting the economy. We are creating jobs. So it's like a win-win for everybody. But again, it's all a matter of informing others. And that's why I also use social media. As Dr. Hayes previously mentioned, social media can also give you the opportunity to tell your ideas to everybody else in the world. It doesn't matter whether they live next to you or they live at the other side of the planet. You know, it's a very powerful tool. So yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Hayes, I'd like to hear from you, if we could, about your TikTok and how you feel like you can bring folks in through educating them about nuclear energy.
Well, I can talk about educating people about nuclear energy, but recruiting them as an advocate, that would really be Kristin. Mothers for Nuclear, they have the crown on that one. But in terms of educating people, that was literally my students' idea.
Really?
It was never my idea. I had only been teaching classes that basically I put together a minor in health physics and a graduate certificate in health physics. And in order to do that, I combined some of the classes. So a lot of the classes for the minor are at the senior level, but you can take it at the master level if you do a research project on top of it. So about half the classes are senior or first year masters. And in order to make sure that the research project was really hard, I required that they did something on one of the 10 grand challenges of the ANS. My intent, my thinking was that would get them, that would plug them into how their research was really making a difference, is that they had to show that it folded into one of the 10 grand challenges, because most of the research we do here already does. So whatever group that student was in, I wanted them to think about that and then do something meaningful. They had to move the needle on this as part of the research project. But half the students chose public engagement. And it was like, okay, I kept my word. I let them do that because it was like, you want to try that. That's one of the hardest things to do. But they did fantastic. They were amazing. I don't think anybody got below like an A- or a B+. They did the research. They looked at what wasn't working. They looked at what the literature said, and a consistent, almost to the T statement was you had to find someone on social media that would speak to the new generation. The people that were set in their ways, it's going to be really hard. But the new generation, if you get an influencer that can speak their language, then you can move the needle. And this is what you need to do. And so I'd go to the students, I'd say, so when are you going to do it? This is great. But none of them would. They all refused. They always said it has to be somebody else. It has to be some. And for year after year after year, I couldn't understand it. I still don't understand it. But what ended up putting me on there was lockdown. It was like, what else am I going to do? If they're not going to do it, then somebody's got to do it. And I guess it's going to be me. So that's what happened.
I feel like you were, like a lot of folks got on TikTok during the pandemic, but you were one of the few out there talking about nuclear energy. So that's really fascinating. I love the organic way that came out. Kristin, anything to add on this topic about bringing new advocates in?
Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to these other responses. And, Robert, what you just said there about, gosh, no one else saying those, not being able to get other people to speak out, I felt like that's kind of how I started. I was just so frustrated that no one else was saying the things that seemed so obvious to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I have to do this, and so I loved your story about starting during lockdown because no one else was saying what you knew you could. Yeah. That's just so relatable. And I think to the point, we need more than just corporate communicators, and having Ryan and Jennifer on this panel is such a cool perspective too, because I think Robert and I have some background in the nuclear industry, and so we have some ideas we have to talk ourselves out of in order to do advocacy. And then Ryan and Jennifer here saying what's up, you guys, this is so cool, why don't we just talk about the future and how exciting this is? And I think Robert and I are both having to get over my history in nuclear, kind of just getting the impression, after starting to work for a power plant and get familiar with the industry, just getting the impression that I needed to apologize for it somehow. I needed to it wasn't something I could be proud of. And when I finally learned and changed my own mind about nuclear energy and realized that aligned with my environmental and humanitarian values, I kind of felt duped, but in the wrong way. I felt like, why have they been keeping this a secret from me all this time, that nuclear is so awesome? And so I just like, we need to talk. For anyone on the line who's been in the nuclear industry for a while, my message to all of us is stop apologizing. Think about the future. Nuclear is a vision for an abundant future for humanity. It's very inspiring. We need to stop apologizing so much about generating nuclear waste and our power not being quite as cheap as we think it should be. We need to focus more on the incredible value that nuclear provides for people. And so I feel like I've been making that same point in every one of my responses. How do we bring more people on board? We need to talk to them about what's in it for me. What are those things that are going to get them pumped up and inspired about, like the same old nuclear industry messaging about how safe we are. Like, that's one of the things that got me inspired to start speaking out. I felt like that wasn't, of course we're going to be safe. That's like I wouldn't be speaking out for nuclear if I thought we were going to be dangerous. Like, that's the bottom line. But can we move on from talking about that and start talking about some of the fantastic benefits that nuclear brings and the hope that nuclear brings for our society? Like, that's how we're going to get more people on board.
Yes. And so much gratitude to everyone who has worked in the nuclear industry for such a long time, because you have delivered this to the world through your excellent operations, and you've earned it. And it's cool. And I just think that like nuclear energy is so punk rock, because it's just like, we're gonna do it. And like you guys have been like in its own way. Like, I think that's like what I love about punk is it's like it wants to be virtuous, and it's like we want, and it's like a distrust for the world. It's kind of an engineering mentality where you're like, things break, like everything can be understood, and it's such a can-do moment. And I just think all of a sudden culturally, as the technology is amazing, and culturally, we're just aligned at this idea that we can solve our problems now, all of a sudden, because we believe in technology. And people are just going to put it together that like nuclear is the technology, and then they're going to do that. It's just going to happen over 25 years. So gratitude to all the workforce, and like, just keep doing the hard work. Like we got to keep going. And and we're going to hire other people, and you guys can retire and hand it off in a perfect way, and then come back and consult and come do the controlled burns. And like, you can always be involved. There's always a role for everyone in nuclear. I think we just have to like kind of just start to be that society-wide movement. And I had one other thing I wanted to say, but I'm just feeling so much gratitude. Oh, and like, if you guys have nuclear waste that you want to get rid of, like, give us a call. We got some people. It's certainly Tilhini Tribe is interested in hosting that waste, and through the consent-based siting program, there are now many communities coming forward around the country that want to provide consolidated interim storage for nuclear and nuclear fuel, and you can apply for that through the Department of Energy's consent-based siting program. Like, my family put in an application at our farm. We can only hold 9 canisters. That's it. And it's going to be a long process. It's a 12-year process, and like, we can learn the nuclear fuel cycle, and we can be professionals, and we can build this over time, and we have time to save. Like, I think this time thing is a big antidote, and everything feels so urgent, and I don't know the answer to that. But I do think that the nuclear industry has something to teach the world right now, that like, if you do a good job, always good things happen. And I love the level of accountability to nuclear, to that. I love all the regulations, and I'm so grateful that you guys have been following them, and they're going to flex over time, or they'll all stay the same. Whatever happens, we'll still do our jobs. The regulatory environment will never be perfect. The price will never be perfect, but we will know that this is something that's going to be the really reliable part of our economy that's always on, and like generating wealth in the sanctuary, temple community, cathedral community, and this bigger economic opportunity. So there's money in it too. And I think we can be more honest about it. Everyone like wants to, but it's like, there should be money going around. And anyways, I think we should be ready for that and be transparent about it. And we don't have to be weird. So anyways, thanks to all the punk rock nuclear folks out there, and like this band is going to stay cool, and you don't,
Stay cool, exactly. Make nuclear cool again. I definitely think that, you know, a lot of what you just said about there's never going to be a perfect regulatory environment, but we can do everything we can to advocate and to, again, educate policymakers, the public, about what a perfect regulatory and, you know, operating environment could look like that would best foster the most nuclear energy possible. On that note, I want to get to some of these questions from the audience. The first one from Zach Abnett about state level advocacy. How much does state level advocacy matter when regulation is federal? Who wants to comment on that? We talked about there's a lot of regulatory environments that nuclear has to operate in, state, federal, local, all of that. So comments on that one from the panelists.
Robert, I can comment on that. If you don't have state support for a nuclear facility, it's pretty much already over. You're going to have that state support, or you're going to potentially have the state file lawsuits against you, and that will put an end to it.
That's true. States are pivotal in that way.
And not just states, but your local government as well. Like, to Robert's point, it absolutely matters. It matters down to, you know, you just think about where those policymakers are getting their information from too. It matters if your community is in support. And then, okay, well, who are the leaders of that community? Who are the leaders of that county, state, federal? It goes all the way. You know, the federal government would, they've done this a lot in the past, push things through that later I mean, think of Yucca Mountain, for crying out loud. You need to have that local community support if you want to be successful. So 2 thumbs up to Robert's response.
I just want to double click on something you said there, and one other question about getting the information. One other question from the audience was, where do I get the base data on new nuclear technologies, safety characteristics, their waste products? From David. He said that. I'm curious where you all, a big part of advocacy is sharing the latest information and accurate information, right? So where would you point folks to get advocacy materials and data?
To Robert. Yeah.
Robert's TikTok.
Yeah, Robert's TikTok is a great place to start. Also, I mean, you almost can't stop people from sharing information about nuclear. Like, it's not like they're sharing nuclear secrets, but they're sharing why they're excited about it. Here's what's coming up. Like, when I don't have a contact at like an advanced nuclear company that I'm excited about or want more information, I go to their website, I use their contact form, they get back to me, they'll send me slides. Like, you just have to, you know, ask for what you're interested in, and then you'll likely be overwhelmed.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
One resource that I found on the internet recently is the NRC documentation for Vogtle 3 and 4. You know, it's all posted online for the public. And it really was interesting for me as a member of the public to see what these documents look like. I was like, okay, now, you know, it just like, it respects the public audience. And that's why we put it on the internet in the first place. And it's like, why are we putting it on the internet if people don't use it? So like, I don't know, like, let's respect the audience and give them the source code. Show us the dirt. We want to see the construction. We want to see, you know, let us be nerds about it. Like, and I think the NRC's done a great job. I think Vogtle was a great success, you know, first of a kind. I would rather you take your time, honestly. Like, don't rush it. Now we got it from here. And like, shout out to all. And we're so lucky that, you know, as engineering progresses, like, large nuclear has a central role to play in the future of nuclear. So like, there's some questions there. And then like, people really did this research on it. It's like, large nuclear is sanctuary economy approved, you know, and like, that is a technology that can scale quickly and efficiently, and we have the supply chain, and it'll be very cost competitive. And like, that's going to be a dynamic with nuclear. Like, as we compete and grow, we're going to want to be very, you know, entrepreneurial in the way that we look at it, but also know that it's going to be seated in community. Community is completely a part of it, and this like more like radical transparency in nuclear will break down this like weird utility vibe and everything. It's not about that. It's like about something so much bigger. So anyways, NRC data, shout out NRC Vogel. Good job, everybody.
Lots of materials.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's literally one of the nicest buildings in the world right there.
And one more before you move on. I mean, Robert has got some great social media content that, which is also, I mean, he's a PhD, like he's got the references, he's got the backup data. You know, Jennifer, you heard her qualifications as well. Go find her on social media. There's so many other advocacy groups too that are sharing good data in a relatable way with sources. Like one that I really love is Generation Atomic. They're really fantastic at putting a message with a visual that's very shareable. And they have so many great sources to go along with that if you want to dig in more.
Right. Other, I'll have to plug Nuclear Matters as well. For, you know, additional, we try to, you know, put out a lot of social content with updated information that's easily shareable with your networks. So, and we're always open, you know, to hearing from you all, from our communities, from the folks on the call here. You know, what else should we be producing and focusing on? Because the whole point is, you know, to really share the data. So I want to just do one last question, and it's really quick. I want to just hear from you all. I think we've talked a lot about the community, the emotion, the, like Ryan, you're saying, the sanctuary economy. Like this, there's a lot of passion, and you all clearly are some of our top advocates for the industry, and you have a lot of passion for the industry. One word, if you could put in one word, why nuclear? Why nuclear? Of all the things that you could go out and advocate for, why nuclear energy? Jennifer.
I think I like to start because I've been an advocate for nuclear since I was a kid. I can totally say that with super security. Why nuclear? Because I know it will not only benefit me or my family or my neighbors, but it will benefit people that I don't even know, that I haven't met yet. So that's the reason behind it. That's why. Long story short.
I love that. Great, good answer. Others? What's your one word on why nuclear? Kristin.
Hope. I said it before. Hope. That's it. Hope is a powerful force.
Like that. Robert?
Simply, any metric that you're going to ascribe to energy is optimized with nuclear. If, with the exception, if you want it to be the cheapest energy, then you're going with natural gas or possibly coal. And then those other metrics just go completely out the window. And you're just saying, I don't care how many people I kill. I don't care how bad I am for the environment. I only care about cheap electricity.
That's right.
Real. That's real.
That's real.
One word. Everyone.
Good one.
Even beyond humans, you know, like our freaking pets, our whales, our fish, or, you know, like all the grass and the, you know, our ancestors, and like, you know, it's that big. It's so cool. Thank you.
Scale is big. It's huge, and the nuclear has something for everyone, as we've said. So I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions. I see a lot of really great ones. We will do some of the things, like I see about a list of various groups who are involved in nuclear advocacy. We can definitely provide that. We'll also send where to find each of our panelists, their social media handles, where you can follow them and learn more of what they're putting out there. Obviously, also don't forget to follow Nuclear Matters on social media as well. But we'll send a follow-up note in the next couple of days. Thank you to our panelists. This was such a great discussion. Like we started the conversation, there's just so much to do now and always, but definitely feels like now as again, the conversation around nuclear has just changed so dramatically. So we're shout out to you all, grateful to you all, and the others who are out there advocating for nuclear every day. Really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you to Nuclear Matters.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for everyone who joined. Have a good day, everyone.